Hello and welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and on the podcast we discuss all aspects of technology and life in international schools, with new episodes live every 2 weeks. We focus on people who are currently working in schools, and we talk about life in their current country and dive into some specific topics. The podcast is brought to you by ACER for Education. People always ask what Chromebooks we recommend and what Windows laptops we recommend, and after trying literally all of them, we always recommend ACER. If you'd like to get more info and try out some devices, please just go to gg.gg/ACER Education. That's gg.gg/ACER Education, and we'll get right back to you. Also, the podcast is brought to you by Apps Events. We're a Google partner. We work all around the world. We've just got one piece of new information right now. This is in January 2021. We're a G Suite Enterprise for Education partner. That's Giuseppe. This is a bunch of premium tools available to people using Google at their schools. We can help you get set up with a free 1-month trial. So please check out the link in the show notes and we'll do that right away. And now, on to the interview.
1, 2, 3, we're on. Good morning and welcome to the International Schools Podcast with Dan Taylor and myself, John Mickton. And we're excited to have Peter Nicholson as our guest. Peter is part of an organization called Baobabooks, and they've been doing some amazing work in trying to leverage the capacity of young kids and adolescents to be able to publish creative writing, short stories, picture books, and he's created an ecosystem to support schools in this activity and project, and we're going to spend some time with him. Peter, good morning. How are you today?
I think Peter's frozen. While we're waiting, John, do you want to talk a bit about what Peter's done with? I'm familiar with Baobabooks, and it seems like a really interesting project.
Yeah, so basically it's an ecosystem where teachers can have their kids publish within their website. And so kids basically have different tools. So they have character building tools, plotline tools, and it's very much WYSIWYG. So it's drag and drop. They can bring in images that they create themselves, or they have, of course, images that are Creative Commons images that the kids can put in, and then they can write their story. It could be a chapter book, it could be short stories or picture books, and then when they're completed, they can actually publish this. So they could publish it to their class, to their teacher, and while they're working, they get to have collaborators. Yeah. So it's just a really nice interface. And I've been spending some time with Peter and some of our teachers exploring this. So I'm really excited to have him here. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, John, and good morning, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with you.
So we were just kind of setting the scene about Baobabooks. I was telling our audience about how it's an ecosystem that really engages young authors to have the capacity to create stories in a website that you've created. It's very interactive, collaborative. But I don't want to go too much into details. I want to turn it over to you. And Peter, you're an entrepreneur. You've been involved in many different things. Why Baobabooks? Why suddenly something about writing and for kids?
Well, it's a fair question. You know, I'm not an educator, but I am a dad, and the genesis of Baobabooks actually is a beach in Santa Barbara, which may be a little odd, but I was there on vacation with my kids and sitting on the beach and watching the dolphins sort of dance along and playing in the waves. And I looked over to talk to my 2 daughters, and they were both on their digital devices, and it almost killed me. It was such a special moment, but they were just, surfing on digital devices. And the whole topic really bothered me anyway, that all this non-productive time that kids were spending on digital devices. And I had learned already that it was difficult to get them away from those things. So I said, okay, I'm going to change my tactic, and I'm going to create something that's engaging, that results in some productive outcome. And since my kids like to read and write and draw, I said, okay, I'll make a platform online where kids could write, illustrate, and publish their own books. And that really was the genesis of Baobabooks.
Awesome. And I think something that's interesting that you're bringing up is this idea that we often assume that most adolescents and young kids are very savvy with digital tools, and we talk to them, we give them this label of digital natives. I really think I want to push back on that they're digital consumers. And what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that, hold on here, you're good at consumption, but you're not creating. You're not being creative. You're not building a product.
Yeah.
And is that kind of where you're coming from, Peter?
It is. You know, I'm worried about kids today. You know, I think creativity and boredom go hand in hand. You got to get bored before you start creating things sometimes. And right now, kids never have any downtime because the minute they've got any time on their hands, they're on their digital device, surfing on TikTok or whatever their favorite app is. And there's no time to reflect or just be innovative and creative. And I wanted to try and do something about that. I wanted to try and take their attentions and focus it on something where they would feel good about it rather than being criticized, because, you know, let's be honest, we criticize our kids all the time for the amount of time they spend on their digital devices. So I wanted to change the dynamic. I wanted to do something positive and use technology as an empowering tool to support kids' creativity and give them something that's rich and rewarding and that they'd be appreciated for, and most of all, that they'd be proud of.
And Peter, maybe tell us a bit about your own journey. How did you suddenly decide to do Baobabooks? Where were you coming from? Maybe just give us a context of your entrepreneurship and why this affirmation and this connection and this passion that I'm hearing about making sure kids are creative.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm actually a lifelong healthcare person. I studied biochemistry and immunology and then went to business school, and I had a pretty successful career in healthcare. But, you know, as we move on in life, I got a little reflective, and I started thinking about things I wanted to try and do that somehow intersected with my life, where I felt like I could change the dynamic and make a difference. And this was one of those things that I had sort of dreamed up while I was busy being a healthcare executive. And I decided to decelerate or de-emphasize the healthcare work so I could find time to get more creative about actually bringing this initiative to life. And it's been a great journey so far.
And Peter, tell us a bit about who are you? Where are you from? How did this all come about?
Well, I'm a Californian. So I'm a lifelong Californian, but I moved 14 years ago. I first moved to Paris, married a French woman, and then moved to Paris with our kids. And we go back to Santa Barbara on vacation, which is where Baobabooks came from. And then moved over to Switzerland 9 years ago. So been over here for a while. And I've got 3 kids, and they're the ones that motivate me and inspire me to do better every day.
Well, whereabouts in Switzerland do you live, Peter?
I live in the French-speaking part, and I'm embarrassed to not be able to speak French better, but I live near a town called Vevey, which is actually where Nestle's headquartered, and it's no coincidence because I was working for a business that was owned by Nestle before I started doing these social impact things.
I've actually
been there. And Vevey is famous for Charlie Chaplin. That's where he settled down, and there's a big museum there.
That's about 2 kilometers from my house. I can walk there easily.
Yeah. Great. And I guess John's actually from Switzerland originally, so even though he sounds very American.
I knew that about him, and I was jealous because, I've been here 9 years, but I'm still not a Swiss citizen. I think in another year I can apply, if not, and then we'll see if they'll have me or not.
So tell us, Baobabooks, why the name Baobab? I mean, the Baobab tree in African culture has a lot of significance. It's about stories, longevity. It's a beautiful living plant. Tell us a bit about the connection and how that came about.
Well, thanks. I like we all do, I was kind of searching to try and find the right name to call this platform. And I was just struck by the baobab tree, which is one of the oldest living things on the planet. It's got a rich lore around it. But importantly, it was traditionally the place where people would gather at the end of the day and tell stories. And I thought that metaphor was really nice for what we're trying to do on the platform. So I coerced it and used it for the Baobabooks name.
And could you maybe step us through the process? So it's a website, and it'll be in the show notes, so we encourage people to go and check it out. But so basically it's targeted to children in schools, so it's an education market that you're targeting. And so I'm a classroom teacher, I get an account, what happens?
Thanks. Well, I'll go in 2 directions. Okay, so I came at it first of all as a dad, and I just wanted to have a tool where kids would be inspired and motivated to write books and to illustrate them and then publish them. So I came at it from a high degree of user interaction and wanting to have the environment something that a student, a child, a teen, or an early adult, young adult, would find engaging. So we built it that way. And I think when people look at it, like we were just certified by the Education Alliance of Finland, which is a very good group that looks at these things and examines the pedagogy and the usability. Anyhow, we've really focused on the user interface. So it's supposed to be, and it is, I think, fun and easy to use for kids or students. On the teacher side, though, we wanted to put teachers in front of technology because so often the technology, it's moving so fast, it's outpacing teachers. And in this case, we've really designed it to be teacher friendly. So the teacher is in control. And this becomes a tool that the teacher can use to try and accomplish their classroom goals. And it supports hybrid learning, which is to say it supports both classroom-based and distance learning, which is obviously in our current sort of COVID era, it's a very useful tool for that kind of a learning environment.
And you have been approaching different schools and different teachers, and I know that we've had some conversations with my school. Tell us a bit about some of the reactions and maybe pushbacks. What are some of the challenges you're facing and also some of the successes? Because those are there too.
My favorite call of any day, other than this podcast, is when I get to demo the platform to a teacher. The closer you are to touching students, the more excited you get about the platform and what you can do with it, because we've kind of created a blank slate for teachers to use, and they can focus it in any different direction they want to support their goals. So I love the calls with teachers because they're always asking the what ifs, or can we do this, or boy, we should get so-and-so involved, or this would be great to do this, and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of excitement around that. I love those calls. The challenge has been, we're new. So we have to get on people's radar screens. And of course, it's difficult to do that during the time of the COVID pandemic when people are so fatigued. I can't imagine a more difficult time for teachers to try and do what they do than to keep going in a positive way and engaging kids, but still delivering the learning that kids need in the context of the world we live in today. So much admiration for teachers everywhere. I think the challenge that we face has just been the intersection of the current situation. Despite all that, we've had some great success, and I'm really happy. We just delivered the platform to the second largest school group in Pakistan. They have 32 different campuses, and they're live now using Baobabooks to create books. And it's just the richest, best experience. So much fun to get the notes back from parents or kids when they have the experience of writing a book.
And as I understand, when the kids publish, you actually have an online shop. Maybe you can talk to us a bit about what that dynamic is. And that's quite a powerful way to motivate kids. So they can publish to their teacher, to their colleagues, so classmates, and then there's the option to be much more public. Maybe you can talk about those phases.
Thank you. We wanted to make it, first thing is we wanted the environment safe. So it's GDPR and COPPA compliant. And nobody can provide comments when somebody's working on their book other than the teacher or anybody who's collaborating together in the project. So there's no, but when the project's done, it can be published, as you say, and it's either published up into, it can be made available to classmates in the class they're in. It can be made available to a bookstore that we might create for the school itself, or in fact, it can be published up into our global community. And that's where things get really excited, because imagine that there's a child in Vevey who writes a book, and a child in Beijing sees it, read, and wants to buy it, and they buy the book. It's one thing for a child a student to write a book and hold their own book in their hand, and you can do that with our platform because we can publish them physically. But it's a whole different thing when somebody writes a book and somebody else buys it. Very motivating. So what we're really trying to do is empower kids to have the experience of creating something that's meaningful to them, that other people appreciate, and in fact, that other people can discover and purchase. And it's a global community because the engagement is really very impressive so far.
Peter,
are kids selling books? Oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, obviously, do the kids, is it just ebooks? And have you thought about doing like some connection with some print on demand service, like what Amazon offers, so children can actually sell paper books as well?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Dan. With our platform, once you publish a book, it publishes up to our bookstore where it can be purchased and downloaded to your e-reader or your Kindle, or it can be ordered through on-demand publishing to have a physical book published and delivered to your home. So we have both options in the platform, embedded in the platform now.
Fantastic. And out of interest, have many children opted for actually print, or I guess obviously the majority, I'd imagine, don't publish it, but the ones that do, have they actually wanted to get a paper copy, or have they stuck with the online version?
Well, we're getting a mix there. It's just a mix. You know, I think what's happening is a lot of time parents are saying, "Hey, I'm buying that book," and what I think is going to happen is you're going to see family members buying books, and then ultimately, I think it'll get a bit broader than that.
Yeah.
And when they're publishing books, there's an income that gets generated, I assume. How does that work?
So the income goes back to the creators through their parents' PayPal accounts.
Fantastic.
Interesting. And I know you have this connection to Baobab. Is there some community connection to that? Are you also trying to amplify an understanding about baobabs through the site, or is that just the name?
Well, there's an organization in South Africa called the Baobab Foundation, and we support them. They are trying to preserve baobab trees because, like many things in the environment in the world right now, the environment's changing and baobab trees are under threat. So they're working to try and help preserve and baobab trees in Africa, and we donate a portion of our profits to them.
Oh, fantastic! That's wonderful.
Just a general thing, Peter. Obviously, John mentioned about, and you mentioned about, children not having the time. Do you think, I'm curious if like, is book reading decreasing? And I mean, I know because I love reading, but I kind of find it harder and harder with work and family and everything to get time to read. Like, are people reading less books and listening to more audiobooks, or has it stayed the same? Or when you include the Kindle and e-readers, does that add a difference? I'm curious what the general trends are with reading.
Well, I do think that, more and more books are going online. And I think, personally, there's something about holding a book that's nice for me. And I like to get away from my digital devices at night and read a book and not have a digital thing. But, I would say that's me, and maybe I'm just a dinosaur. I think kids today are very comfortable reading things online, although I can tell you it's transformational. I've seen it. When a kid holds their own book in their hand, it does something. It really does something that's meaningful. They just have this sense of accomplishment that you can't describe until you see.
Sure.
Dan, it's interesting. That's a great question you ask, because during the COVID pandemic, our librarians have seen an increase in checkout of hard copy books.
Interesting.
Yeah. And especially in the lower school. And that's a very small segment. I'm not saying this is this is a scientific study. It's just very much an anecdote. But we do this summer checkout, and last summer in June, we had grocery bags of books going out, thousands and thousands of books. And so I think kids still like the handling, the pictures. I think parents too sometimes want to get their kids off a device. And so they prefer for them to have a hard copy book, because, of course, you can do it online through e-readers. But I know that also the graphic novels are really popular, and kids like checking them out. So that's just a small. It's. I think there's something that Peter says is that physical touch. Lifting the page. There's something that's timeless, I think.
Yeah, what I really, first of all, it's great to hear that kids are checking out books. I'd love to hear that. And I do think that there's something that's different about holding something physically in your hand. And that's what I like about the platform, is it has the ability to translate something that's ephemeral or online into something physical in terms of a book. So you really have this sense of accomplishing something when you hold it in your hand. And of course, you can brag and show all your friends when they come over and all the rest of that stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff that happens when it's
interesting. I think if I think about myself, I've gone through 3 phases. Obviously, originally was paper books. Then I got an Amazon Kindle and I read all my books online or on the iPad. And then I kind of didn't really like that. And I got into audiobooks. I had an Audible account. I probably had like 50 or 60 books on Audible. And then I kind of had enough of audio because I already listened to a lot of podcasts anyway. So I just didn't have the time. And now I'm back to paper books. I'm back to where I started after going kind of full circle and trying everything. I'm back to reading paper books again.
Well,
That's interesting, Dan. I think that's often, I can echo that journey too. I've gone through that and I'm back to the paper books. I think partly for me is just so I know that I'm off my device, because I can read the paper on the phone. And the reality is, as I'm reading the paper, I get distracted. Even if I have my notifications out, I go and look at Facebook, my LinkedIn, and my Instagram, and it becomes a very fragmented experience. So I think I've been trying to discipline myself, as you're saying, is to come back to the traditional paper book.
Yeah.
Peter, when you were thinking about this idea, and you shared the story about wanting your kids to be creative and co-creators, did you go and look at the market? Did you go out there and say, okay, who else is doing this? What's out there? Who's your competition? And what is it about your interface that might be different from others that you watched and looked at?
Well, it's a great question. And I guess, in the School of Entrepreneurialism, I get an F because I didn't. I just wanted to do something and I was passionate about it. And I started going for it. And I sort of designed the website on PowerPoint and then got a designer involved, et cetera, et cetera. And it was only, as we started going that we started looking at the competitors. But I kind of had my blinders on. I just wanted to create something, frankly, for my kids. And then I thought, okay, for other kids. And then it just started going from there. And then, of course, we wanted to make sure that what we did was different from other things that are out there. And there's, we looked at some 20 platforms now that we've analyzed. And there's some that are closer to us. And we think we have some differences from them in the way we do what we do that will give us a place in the marketplace. The reaction seems to be positive so far, but it's still early, but I'm pretty confident about where we're going.
Yeah,
Tell us a bit about your team.
You mentioned about the website designer. Who actually, do you have I'd love to get the contact of whoever did your site, 'cause I love your website. The graphics are fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah,
all the stuff, it's really, really well done. Definitely I like the website a lot.
Well, I appreciate that, Dan. And I'm very fortunate to have a chief technology officer who's really good. And our entire build team is in the southern Philippines. So we're a social impact company, right? So if you're a school and you've got a service school that you have, a school in some underprivileged area that you work with and do good things with, we'll give that school our platform for free because we really want to lower the barriers to education and get kids in the platform and creating things and feeling good about themselves and discovering the wonder of reading and writing and creating. But we also are social impact on the inside. And in the southern Philippines, it's largely a Muslim part of the country, and the Philippines is a very Catholic country. So in the southern Philippines, there's a lot of discrimination. The people we have are working with us. We have 10 people on the team now. They're all gamers and just really, really good. And we absolutely benefit from that. They are so talented, and I appreciate your comments on the platform, Dan. I just feel, we've got things that are going on that are even better than what I see right now. But I'm really pleased with it too.
And tell us a bit about, so you came up with this idea and you have a team in the Philippines, and I know you have some other people supporting you. How have you been financing this? I just think, as people consider entrepreneurship and startups, of course, money becomes an issue. And are you starting to generate an income? And what's even more interesting is that you are social impact companies. So if it's a low income, socioeconomic or economic, challenged area, you give the platform for free. So talk to us a bit about that aspect of finances.
Okay, well, you might note that I have a beard. The reason is I can't afford razor blades anymore because I'm spending all my money on Baobabooks. It's all self-funded so far. Something I'm passionate about, but I'm raising some money from institutional investors right now to help us go further. We've got about 20 people on the team, so it's not a small initiative right now. We're starting to have some, field success. Obviously, we're not making money, but we're selling the platform. We're generating revenue, but we're not. Unfortunately, we're not. The revenue isn't bigger than the expenses quite yet. But we're so motivated by what we're doing. I'm in touch with a group here in Europe that is focused on cancer treatment for children. And we're talking about rolling the platform out in 63 hospitals in 18 countries in Europe as a way of engaging children who are under some really trying, difficult circumstances and giving them something that's positive and uplifting to do to take them away from their daily problems and focus on a different thing, and maybe even connect with people around the world and collaborate to publish a book. So we're always looking for ways that we can reach out and engage people and do good things. And I sometimes it's very emotional.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, Peter, I've got a question about obviously entrepreneurship. We talk to a lot of teachers that are doing entrepreneurial things or looking at different projects, whether it's kind of a side project or obviously things like training, tutoring, course materials, and I even started a Facebook group about it. Like, do you have any? You've also had quite a varied entrepreneurial career. Do you have any advice for kind of educators that want to do something entrepreneurial?
Yeah.
Maybe as a side project, maybe somebody want to transition into it. There's all kinds of things. Any advice about how to do that, fitting around a job, and any kind of takeaways or anything you could suggest?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, we need to hire a couple more educators. So if anybody out there is interested, call me. But anyway, after that crass public service announcement, I will say that the best innovators are people who know the market. And guys like me that come in from left field, sometimes we get, lightning strikes, we get a bit lucky. But the people who know best are the people who live it and breathe it every day and see the deficiencies and know where it can be better. Spot a problem and come up with something that they can solve. That is the magic. Guys like me, we're a dime a dozen. We can write a business plan. We can put a financial model together. So what? Anybody can do that. But the people who really are valuable are the people who really understand the market and are closest to it. So I think if you're a teacher and you've got some ideas, the best thing to do is start framing out. First of all, understand the problem. I would say, first of all, start with the problem and say, okay, here's what the problem is, and this is why it's a problem, and here are the issues. And then say, okay, well, my solution is to do X, Y, and Z. And if you can kind of frame out a problem and a solution, you can then take that and engage other people to say, okay, well, if I've got these components, how can I act on it? And then you hit your network, and I've got a consulting company. I'll give anybody free advice on stuff like that, because I love helping people start new companies, and I do it all the time. If you think you know something, if you see something and you can do about it, if you've got something you think you can do about it, follow up on that, because that's how good things happen.
That's great advice. And I think sometimes, Peter, do you find that, the education market, is there a lot going on? Are you finding as you enter into schools, they're like, oh no, I've already been hit by 5 or 6 other type of, creators and suppliers? Is it a tough market compared maybe to what you're used to?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm still learning about it. And there are experiences that some of the schools have with other platforms, but we are a bit different. We're now in 6 languages. We support 6 languages. Got, let's see, Catalan, English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. And we're talking about adding Hindi, Mandarin, and perhaps Arabic soon, based on some of the discussions we're having right now. So we're always trying to expand the universe of engagement. And that's a bit different from what our competitors do. It is very, very engaging for kids. So it's a fun place. We've gamified the process of making a book. And I think that's a bit different. Free for kids and parents. So anybody can just get in and start writing it. And of course, if a school wants to use it, then there's an administrative fee, or there's a fee, because we've got a platform that they use to do everything. I think the digital and physical book publishing is a little bit different. Some do that, but not all of them for sure. The online marketplace and the ability to reach out and engage is a bit different. And also, I think the fact that you can either use artwork that's available through our website, or you can have other artwork that you want to load up. But more importantly, you can have your own artwork that you can upload into the book. And so you can not only write your own book, but you can illustrate it as well. So I think there's flexibility that we have on our platform that's a little bit different than some of the competitors out there. And that seems to be resonating with some of the people we talk to.
When you look at what kids are writing, is there a pattern in topics? Are they writing about certain things? Are you noticing there's themes or favorites?
Gosh, it's so varied. I can just tell you that some of the things I read are really touching. Some of the notes I get are touching. We've now have 3 different formats that we support. We support picture books, short stories, and chapter books. So those are 3 different, you can choose to write one of those kinds of books, and we'll have that available on the platform. Additionally, we're adding a few other formats that we think are important, that based on the feedback that we're getting. But I really, what happens is the school will decide to use the platform to support a particular lesson plan they have. You know, we had one school want to focus on deserts and what have you, and so they put a lot of desert imagery in there, and you know, they wrote stories about things happening in the desert. Another school was focused on medieval and whatever. So I mean, it just really depends. I can't say there's, you know, that there's a particular genre that's been favored, because every school is different.
And would you say many of these kids, this is the first time they get to do this? Is this kind of or they're writing in more traditional sense on paper or on their Google Doc? Yeah. Now, this gives them more of a feeling of what it's like because you have story starters, you have character maps and things like that. Do you find that is something that they're not exposed to?
Yeah, well, that's right. We've got what we call the creativity board, which helps kids to try and figure out how to lay out the basics of the story before they get started. Because if they're stuck or they've not done it before, it's a great tool for them to use. So, you know, what I find is most schools have some sort of writing project, you know, obviously, but where they get excited is they can take that and put it online and manage it online and actually publish the books. So it takes what many teachers are already doing, and it gives them tools to sort of enhance the outcomes and probably manage it in a way that's a little bit easier for them. So, yeah, it's just a lot of excitement.
And I heard on LinkedIn that you got some endorsement, which was quite significant. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, we just got certified by the Education Alliance Finland. And you know, I'm not an educator, John. You know, Dan, I'm just a dad trying to do good things in the world. But I appreciated the fact that we really needed to make sure that we had a robust learning methodology and pedagogy involved and embedded in the platform. So about the middle of last year, I reached out and got a teacher involved, the former headmaster involved, to help us guide the development of the platform and make sure that we were developing something that was highly useful and interesting for educators. Because I felt like we were connecting with kids, but you know, I didn't know. So I just said, look, if I don't know, I just find somebody who knows more than me. So thanks to her name's Christine DeLuca. Thanks to her, we've really done good things there. And what we were able to do is then take that and get engaged with Education Alliance Finland. And they spent about 6 weeks evaluating our platform, and they just came back and provided us the outcome, and they certified our platform. And something like half of the ed tech platforms they look at don't get certified apparently, and we passed very well. We got marks of 90% or above. So I'm really pleased with that, and I think it's an important endorsement of the work we do.
Congratulations, and that's so important, especially to have that endorsement from a reputable education authority, because that gives you more collateral as you move forward in those conversations with schools. Peter, any parting words? It's just been fantastic hearing your story, and really, I just love the combination of social impact and getting kids to be creative and really understanding some of the challenges that we all face as parents and teachers with this, ubiquitous digital devices that are just, it's so hard. It's an addiction that we are really, the complexity and the challenges are so nuanced, it makes it difficult. Any parting thoughts or any messages or any reflections now that you've been doing this for a while?
Well, thanks, John. We want to have an impact by connecting people and supporting creativity. We want to build a global community, and we're in discussions in, I don't know, something like 23 different countries right now. We build a separate website for every single school. So we want to work with schools and support them, because ultimately we think that children aren't born with prejudice. Children aren't born with hatred. Children aren't born with any negativity at all. And it's only as we grow up and get jaded or contaminated by bad things that we start to change our perspective. So we think that if we can build a global community where kids are meeting other kids online and doing good things together, it's going to make the world a better place ultimately. So we are absolutely enthusiastic about engaging with people all over the world to try and help increase awareness of each other and appreciate the diversity is actually the richness. It's not a bad thing. So we'll work with any school anywhere, and we'd be very pleased to hear from anybody and work with them and build them a site so that they can have their own books, their own website affiliated with their school where their kids can get engaged and do the same things.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And of course, in the show notes, we have links and more information Peter's kindly shared. So definitely check out the show notes if you want to spend some time on Baobab Books. Dan, I don't know, any parting thoughts or final question?
No, thanks very much, Peter. It's been a great chat, and hope to talk again.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate the opportunity, Dan and John, to get on. We're just a little company trying to get started here, and the opportunity to talk with you and exchange some views has been really meaningful for me and for us. And on behalf of Baobab Books, I just want to say thank you.
A real pleasure. Thank you, Peter, and look forward to being in touch and following the journey of Baobab Books as you continue in this quest to make kids creative and writers. Thanks so much, Peter.
Thank you, too.